Hi everyone, I'm going to explain the negative space project. This is a first grade or kindergarten project that you can choose from. So let's go over the directions here. First, let's go over our vocabulary words because there is a vocabulary word that we haven't learned yet, which is negative space. So let's talk about what that is. So negative space right here in your vocab box says that negative space is the empty space around an object. So normally when we are drawing an object, we usually draw the object and fill that in with texture and detail and color. But when you use negative space, you're actually leaving that main object blank and you're coloring or adding texture and detail to the outside space of that object. So here's a good example of positive and negative space. If you look at the shark here on the left side shark shows positive space. So inside of the body of the shark is where the artist is putting all these details, textures, lines, and they could even put color. The one on the right here though, this shark is blank. So basically the artist is using the space around the shark, the negative space, to add detail, and they're leaving the detail of the main part of the shark blank. Here's another example of positive and negative space. This artist is kind of playing around with the idea of negative space, because if you look at the picture first, you see the key and you think that that is the main subject of the picture. But the artist is actually using the negative space around the key to do something kind of funny. They're turning these spaces into little city buildings. So they're kind of playing with our eyes and kind of showing an optical illusion. They're playing with that negative space around the key. So let's go back to our directions here. So the object of this work of art is to create a design where you use negative space. So students will fill the negative space of traced objects with their choice of a color group. So you are basically tracing a few objects on your blank paper. You can draw them or trace them. And you're arranging those objects. You can overlap them in an interesting way in your composition. And then once you have those objects laid out and traced or drawn, then you're going to choose a color scheme. So color schemes that you can choose from here, you can choose neutral colors is an idea. Neutral colors means black, brown, white, and gray. You can choose warm colors. So warm colors are from the rainbow that are a little bit more towards things that would remind you of things that are hot, like red, oranges, and yellows, even pink. Cool colors are things that remind you of things that are a little bit more towards the cold end of the spectrum, like blues, purples, and greens. Monochromatic colors means using one color. So that means if I was going to use blue, for example, I could use dark blues, light blues, and all the different shades of blues. So if you can think of a color scheme that it's not in here, for example, you could maybe think of using complementary colors, analogous colors, a different type of color scheme that we've learned about, you can use one of those as well. So you're going to need a pencil for this, a piece of paper, and something to color with. So colored pencils, markers, or crayons would be okay. So step one, we went over the art terms, so we can kind of skip that. Step two says you're going to draw with a pencil first on your white paper, and you can trace your hands, you can trace an art supply or a different interesting object that you find in your house. Try and think of something that has interesting outlines to it. And arrange those objects on your paper and trace them. You can even use a letter, maybe letters of your first name if you like. If you have letter stencils, or you can try and sketch letters of your name. It's up to you what objects you put in your picture. And then once you like your drawing, you can go over the lines with maybe a dark marker like black to kind of show the outlines standing out. Then you should pick your color group. So we went over a couple color groups you can choose from. You're going to choose one of those color groups, or one that you can think of that isn't in that list. And then what you're going to do is take your colors and you're going to color the negative space in an interesting way. So if I traced my hand and a pair of scissors and a pencil and I wrote the letter S, I would not color the inside parts of those objects. I would color the space around the objects in different ways. And it looks like that's all you have to do for this assignment. So if you would like to get a little bit more detailed with this, you can fill the negative space with patterns, with designs, with texture, but make sure you're sticking to your color scheme. Okay, that's about it for that assignment.